Welcome everyone. My name is David Mandzuk. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Education. I welcome you here to the 2018 Joan Irvine Lecture, featuring this year's keynote speaker, Dr. Sabre Cherkowski from the University of British Columbia, Okanagan. Before I say a little bit about Joan Irvine, that's my role tonight, is to introduce the fantastic lady for whom this lecture is named. I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji Cree, the Dakota, and the Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Now, many of you will have heard this statement in the past, and I just want you to know that, as I said at this year's homecoming celebration, this statement for us in the faculty is not just a tagline. It represents our sincere commitment to working with Indigenous peoples in a good way and to working towards the TRC's calls to action so that more Indigenous students graduate from high school and from some form of post-secondary education, and so that our graduates are more able to honor Indigenous ways of knowing and more able to integrate Indigenous perspectives across the curriculum. So thank you. Now, on to the rest of the evening. First of all, let me say once again that we're pleased that so many of you decided to join us tonight. Before we begin tonight's lecture, and we listen to Dr. Cherkowski talk about well-being, teacher well-being, I'd like to provide some background on the amazing woman for whom tonight's lecture is named. Born in Winnipeg and educated at this university, Joan Irvine has made an enormous contribution to teacher education in this province. Initially as a school teacher in rural Manitoba, but primarily as a teacher educator for some 30 years. She became a member of the staff at the Manitoba Teachers College in 1964 and joined the Faculty of Education at the University of Manitoba the next year when the college was closed and its staff was integrated with the university. One would not be too far off the mark in calling Joan Irvine the Manitoba teacher educator of her time. Certainly, the honors she accumulated speak to the impact that she has had. For example, she's received many, many awards, and I'll just mention them. She received the Saunderson and Stanton Awards for Excellence in Teaching, the Lifetime Membership awarded her by the Manitoba Teachers Society on the occasion of her retirement, the John M. Brown Award for her outstanding contribution to teacher education, awarded to her by the Education Alumni Association, the Excellence in Post-Secondary Teaching Award presented to her by the Manitoba chapter of the Canadian College of Teachers, one award that is particularly dear to her, which is the naming of a day in her honor by the staff and students of Lord Roberts School. Not too many people get a day named in their honor. I think that's pretty amazing. On the occasion of her retirement in 1998, her friends and colleagues even established the Joan Irvine Bursary, and every year that bursary is awarded to a very deserving BEd student with demonstrated financial need. During her time in the faculty, Joan encouraged both colleagues and students to reach for new heights, and she did so with an eye on the objectives to be achieved and in a way that gave them the confidence to strive even higher in the future. At the heart of her work was critical inquiry. She saw her teaching as providing an opportunity to help others inquire into what they were doing, and perhaps even more importantly, why they were doing it. Even after retirement, Joan committed a lot of her time, I think she told me earlier tonight, 5 or 6 years of her time after retirement in an effort to develop the early years program. She engaged with faculty members in challenging discussions. She worked with students to further their understanding of classroom issues, and she helped the faculty build closer ties with schools, which I think is a legacy that lives on to this day. In other words, Joan Irvine is the embodiment of the highest standards of the faculty in the University of Manitoba, and we are so pleased that she was able to join us once again this year. Joan, would you mind standing and waving to the crowd, please?
It's amazing I can still stand.
If you didn't hear that, Jane said it's amazing she can still stand. Well, I think you can do more than that, and we're very grateful that you're here tonight. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Jen Watt, who will introduce Dr. Cherkowski. Thank you.
It brings me great joy to see so many people here out on a dark, cold November evening. I think any month that ends with "burr" and when you leave your home is just congratulations, really. And I think it's great that we're here to think together about how and why teacher well-being matters. And I really can't think of a much more fitting way to honor the life work of Joan Irvine than to collectively focus on ways to notice, nurture, and sustain flourishing in our schools. Before I introduce our guest speaker for the evening, I would like to take this opportunity to thank those who have contributed to making sure that this evening would flourish. So I would like to really give my heartfelt thanks to our amazing support staff for their help organizing all of the food, the tech support, the travel arrangements, the event promotion, and everything else that goes on behind the scenes. I would also like to thank the Faculty of Education Dean's Office, the Faculty of Education Alumni Association, and the Wellbeing and Wellbecoming in Schools Research Initiative for the generous support of this evening's lecture and tomorrow's Envisioning Flourishing in Schools, Voices from Students, Educators, and Researchers on Wellbeing Symposium. I had the great pleasure of meeting Dr. Sabre Cherkowski last September when I went to a symposium on flourishing in schools that she co-hosted with Dr. Keith Walker at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan. The conference was a culminating event after a multi-year research project. Keith and Sabre describe this collaboration in the introduction to their collected book, Perspectives on Flourishing in Schools. They write, "Several years ago, we started on a research journey towards learning about schools from the perspectives of flourishing. As researchers, we wanted to consider the work of teaching, learning, and leading in such a fashion that we might see new ways of organizing schools, ways where the well-being of the humans who make up the living systems are placed at the center of their moral purposes, efforts, and initiatives." Listening to Sabre share her passion for her research and watching her work in collaboration with educators from across her province and around the country was very inspiring for me as a new scholar who would like to make similar contributions in Manitoba. But meeting Sabre was also very inspiring to me as a human being. She is kind, compassionate, playful, funny, and acutely present with the people around her. I think I kind of overshared on the way home from the airport. She knows a lot about me now because she's just very present. She models what it means to be an educator who embraces flourishing and strives for well-being in all aspects of her life. Dr. Cherkowski is an associate professor and director of the Center of Mindful Engagement at the University of British Columbia. She teaches and researches in the area of leadership and organizational development with a current focus on well-being, professional learning and collaboration, mentoring and coaching, and diversity and education. She brings experiences as a teacher, a coach, and a parent to her passion for exploring flourishing in educational contexts. I'm very grateful that she's able to join us tonight and for tomorrow's symposium. Please help me welcome Dr. Sabre Cherkowski.
Thank you, that was lovely. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to test out some sound systems. So if I get too close to something, it starts to screech. Can you hear me in the back corner if I've got my voice just on? So I'm going to stand here just for a moment. I just want to make sure that I start properly and ensure that I tell you a little bit about myself, but also that I give some thanks for being here. And I just want to make sure that I'm kind of grounded and ready to roll before I start moving around. And I tell my students that the PowerPoints tend to be more for me than for them. I want to share a lot, and we might end up going in different directions, and so this just helps me stay focused and connected. So don't worry too much about what's on there. Truly and honestly, there's not much on there that you need to remember. So enjoy. I'm really happy to be here, and really it is a pleasure to be in a room with so many people who are invested and interested in this idea of engaging teachers from a well-being perspective. I can't think of anything more important for our schools, for our community, and as you'll see when you hear me talking a little bit, for our world. I think education really is at the center of what it means to contribute to bettering humanity. We sometimes forget about the bigness of the work of education, and there's so many people in education. So when you hear me say teacher, please know I'm talking specifically to you. You may be a teacher in the front office of a school. You may be a teacher who is helping our students remember the importance of taking care of our environment as you're in the school cleaning, in your custodial capacity. You might be a teacher in the bus. You might be a teacher in the accounting office as you're working with your colleagues to help them do what you need to do to ensure that our education system works well. So when you hear teacher, I'm talking from my research habit and from my practitioner habit as a teacher in the school, but please know that I am talking to you and each of you, and hope that you can connect to what I'm saying when I do say the word teacher. So thank you again to Dr. Watt and Dr. Falkenberg for this invitation to come. It really is a pleasure meeting Jen last year. I guess it was almost 2 years ago, was as wonderful for me as it was for you. There are some people that you meet that they touch you and influence you in really important ways, and it's really been a pleasure to be able to start that connection with Jen. Thank you to the Faculty of Education for the support for this opportunity, and thank you to Joan Irvine. What a pleasure to meet you. It was an honor before I met you to be able to speak with this series, and then to have met you and connected. And I was saying to Joan as we just had a quick chat that I have a feeling everything I say she's already living out in her life. I have a feeling, and I said to her, oh, I think you're one of those positive deviants living extraordinarily well. So I think she probably is a model and a mentor. So thank you very much for that. So I will probably start to move around a little bit here. Really what I'm hoping that tonight is an opportunity to share some of the research. So I worked, as Jen said, I worked with my colleague, Dr. Keith Walker from the University of Saskatchewan, and we had been for the past, well, I guess since 2011, he and I have been thinking about what would it look like to arrange our schools in such a way that humans were at the core center of what we do each and every day. And I know we think we do that, but when you stop and notice the way we organize much of our world, it's not necessarily explicit that humans and what it means to be human and growing and contributing and evolving and learning and making mistakes and joining with, I'm not sure that that's always the focus. So we started this adventure of trying to understand what would it mean to flourish in our work. So I'm hoping to share some of our research for you and try out some practices. So here's the disclaimer. I won't let anyone leave. I won't be one of those people that say, if you don't want to do this, you're welcome to leave. No, you all must stay. But here's disclaimer, warning. I am hoping that this evening is an opportunity for you to learn through and with the work that we've been doing. There's Thomas. I sort of lecture the way I teach, meaning I don't lecture. So there will be lots of opportunities for you to connect with yourself tonight and reflect on some things, try out a few practices where you can sit in your chair and just be by yourself and try. And here's the potentially scary part for some people, is that you have an opportunity tonight as well to talk to someone in this room. And for some of us, we don't spend a lot of our time talking with each other about things that really matter to us in terms of what do we want to do and be with our life. So I'll kind of try to go from like comfort level of we should all be able to do this without sort of falling apart in a pool of sweat, kind of up to you might talk to a real live human tonight that you may have not known before. So that's kind of the level of comfort that we'll try. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll keep a temperature check and see how we're doing. And then the last piece is really give you an opportunity to reflect on your own context, whether that's in a school, in a workplace, in a community, wherever you carry out your work. again, I'll use educational language, but I do believe that these ideas resonate across the spectrum of what it means to carry out our life in a way that we hope to influence positively others in whatever sense that might be. So, ready or not, folks? They're all looking at me like, really? She's serious. Here we go. I'll do it, as I said, very gentle. So here's my calling card. This is really the beliefs that me and my colleague work from. So the top quote is a quote that I think helps to say much more eloquently what I believe about the power of schools, the power of any organization and institution. I love reading it. I know you can all read, but it gives me a lot of energy every time I read it, so I take the opportunity whenever I can. So we believe positive institutions not only elevate and connect human strengths internally, but serve to refract and magnify our highest human strengths into society. Positive institutions are the vehicles for bringing more humanity, courage, wisdom, love, and value into the world. So that's a pretty amazing way to describe the school building that we walk into, the bank that we work in, the community center that we volunteer at, the home that we live in with our families. Wow, what a different way to think about. I have the opportunity to connect human strengths, amplify, magnify out into the world, and be a beacon of love and hope and courage for others. So this truly is part of what has drawn me to the work of researching flourishing in schools, is the idea that schools can become that refractor of goodness, and that there's a lot of good in schools already that we are going to try to uncover in different ways. And this idea of seeing differently is a theme that I'll keep coming back to. So as we were trying to understand how might we research school organization from this positive perspective, being drawn into it through this positive organizational researchers researching from this positive perspective, we found the positive psychology. And we were starting to see that the studies being done in psychology around gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, love, kindness, all of the good values and virtues that make us who we are when we're at our best, psychology was studying those and deciding, well, what happens when we focus on those aspects? What happens? Well, what do we notice? Learning improves, creativity improves, connectivity improves, relationships improves. When you do this kind of research in businesses, productivity improves, and health and risk-taking improves. So we kept seeing over and over again that the positive psychology findings were telling us, yes, you're on some kind of a right path here. We need to start finding ways to focus on what works well so that we can connect that to what we do in schools, teaching and learning and helping students and adults grow into their highest human potentials. So then we noticed that, well, Seligman, and we stole his word, flourishing. It's actually Aristotle's way back. Martin Seligman determined that a theory of well-being would include experiencing positive emotions, enjoying positive relationships, having a sense of meaning in what you're doing, feeling some positive achievement, and feeling a sense of engagement. So his PERMA model of psychology was really calling to us in terms of, wow, those are the kinds of attributes of really good teaching. When we're at our best, as teachers, when we're at our best in the world and whatever our context is, we probably experience these. How can we start to notice it? So that was the start of our path. And we wondered, well, why focus on the positive? You know, everyone tells us that it's Pollyanna, it's too easy, it's idealistic. So we were curious. There had been some research done, and quite heavily now we're looking at what does the brain do in terms of how we experience emotions and what happens with that. Well, on the negative side, negative, and this is a metaphor, negative tends to stick to our brains like Velcro. Positive kind of slips off like Teflon. So think about that in terms of someone you know and love. When you have a negative criticism or a negative remark from that person, that Velcro, it just sticks. And that person probably has to tell you 5 positive things before the positive sticks. And so that 5 to 1 is sort of that ratio of how many positives do we need to help balance out that stickiness of the negative. So again, we were drawn to teaching and thinking about I'll think of one instance, the famous feedback sandwich. You give a positive and a negative and a positive, done. Guess what happens? The student hears the negative. Because whoosh, the positives have slipped off like the egg. So how do we start paying attention to the way we design our learning to take advantage of some of what we are starting to know about psychology in the brain and how we can start to be interacting with each other? So why study well-being in schools? And I know I told you I wasn't going to lecture. I promise your turn is coming. For everyone's like, no, please lecture, please lecture. It's coming. Why study well-being in schools? Well, if Manitoba, I think, is probably similar to BC and undergoing some pretty significant changes in our education system following international trends of knowing that the way we did schools previously is not really working well for our students, knowing that the futures they have ahead of them are pretty volatile, uncertain, ambiguous. They need to be able to work well with each other. They need to be creative and critical thinkers. They need to be able to understand socially and emotionally how to engage in this world that they're going to be contributing to building with each other moving forward. And so all of those pieces are what we're wanting for our students in schools. Well, wouldn't you know it, what do we need then if we want to create these for our students? We know from research that the student or the teacher is the #1 influencer in terms of student achievement, or I don't like the word achievement, but truly student achievement in schools. The teacher is the most important piece of that puzzle. So if we want students who are going to be engaged and collaborative and on fire and excited and socially, emotionally, that's not what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. We also need for our teachers to be engaged and purposeful and adventurous. Thinking about our Joan, we need them to be adventurous and playful and happy to be engaged in the struggle of figuring out how in the world do we get these people to learn. That's a really exciting struggle to be in, depending on how you look at it. So again, this is giving you the why we spent the time that we did looking at it. And I want to give you that research piece. So just recently there was some research out of McGill. Nancy Heath put together a large literature review of all of the research so far on teacher well-being. And interesting to see what she's finding from the research that is starting to come out. Venting tends to do more harm than good. Think about the staff room wherever you work. No more needs to be said. Stigma plays a role in participating in well-being activities. So do you remember I prefaced by saying I might ask you to see if you want to do some kinds of activities. Some people may feel somewhat hesitant to engage in a yoga class that's offered at the workplace. Yoga has lots of really great benefits, and there are lots of also associations with it for different reasons. And so assuming that just because we offer something means that teachers are going to necessarily do and then benefit from it, we need to start to pay attention to what does it mean for teachers to attend offerings. More isn't always better, as my kids try to tell me when I'm talking at them. Like, got it, Mom, got it. More isn't better, got it, Mom. And then this last one was really interesting for us. Increasing positive emotions is as much or more important than decreasing negative ones. So when we think about the idea of stress and burnout, you're not going to hear me talk very much about those pieces tonight, not because they're not important, they are essential. They are so important. Too many of our educators are suffering in the workplace. Too many of our educators do not feel the kinds of support that they need to be able to get into those spaces that will allow them to play, to be adventurous, to collaborate. So we need to attend to organizations in a way that ensures that teachers feel well so that they can thrive. Now, part of why I'm not going to talk about it is that there might be other ways of developing this notion of well-being in schools beyond trying to get rid of stress and burnout. What if we focused on what already works well so that we can grow and amplify it? What if we start to notice all the flowers that are there? I promise you there are flowers in every single workplace that you're in. I promise you that wherever you volunteer, wherever you spend your time, there are flowers abound. It's just that we've been paying attention to how to get rid of those darn weeds. So what happens when we pay attention to the flowers? So that's part of the perspective that we've been looking at. So some of the activities that they're finding contribute to well-being. Mindfulness, there's a lot of research going on around the benefits of mindfulness. Warning, that will be the first activity portion of the evening. I will offer you an opportunity to just sit quietly and breathe. So there's your first warning. Stress management approaches. We offer a really wonderful stress management approach for educators at UBC Okanagan. It's terrific. And we hope and continue that these programs will be available for teachers. As many as need and want should have access to these kinds of programs that they can access when they need to help them with coping with the complexities. Gratitude practices, emotion regulation activities, yoga, exercise, walking, and stretching, all really wonderful opportunities for growing well-being. So, as I said, get ready, it's about to happen. So this idea of mindfulness is becoming quite almost popular in terms of helping us understand the benefits of paying attention to the quiet spaces within, to take advantage of the stress release that happens when we stop and settle and breathe and rest and pause. There's also lots of relationship benefits. As you start to learn the mindfulness pieces, you can respond to situations when you take that pause and give yourself that space and not react so quickly. So there tends to be relationship benefits as well, as you are being able to more respectfully, quietly, calmly connect with those people around you. So, without further ado, so this is a pause practice that comes from our Smart Education at UBC program. It's a very simple practice. It's a physical practice, and it's also a mental practice. For some, it might become a spiritual practice. It depends on your context, who you are, what you bring to this. At its core, it is sitting, it is breathing, it is resting, it is relaxing. I like this one because it can be very quick, or you can do it as long as you need. The technique is you breathe in as we all can, because we all made it here tonight, which means we're functioning breathers, which is awesome. And we breathe out, and that's all we need to be doing. You'll see there are cycles of sensations, emotions, thoughts. When you do the fuller practice, as you breathe in, I'll guide you through the sensations piece, but you could do it again with emotions and thoughts. So at your comfort level, sitting or standing, eyes open, eyes closed, take a minute and kind of wiggle down in your seat and feel where you are. We sometimes forget that we're bodies walking around. Feel where you are. That chair is really solid and it's supporting you. And it's connected to the ground, which is solid and supporting us. So really feel where you are. When you're ready, put your mind into your belly and take a really big belly breath, as deep as you can. Bring it all the way in, all the way in. You can let those shoulders just stay down, and then let it out. The first relaxing breath. So as you breathe in on the next one, as big as you can, as full as you want, feel your body. What sensations are there? Notice where that breath is going. Is there tingling? What do you feel? And relax. Take another big breath in. This time, breathe all the way up to the top of your head. Feel how good that feels to create all that space and let it out. Hey, okay, so apparently there's a person behind there. What else do we see? I see bushes, I see a structure, patterns. There's an owl. There's an owl? Oh my goodness, you people have got some interesting mindfulness. There's a cat? How many people, just to show a hand, see a cat? Okay, well, there's an owl, there's a cat, there's a man, there's a structure, there's some patterns, there's some wood. Please don't fall. Does everyone see the cat yet? Yes. There's a cat in there? What if everyone starts to look up this section of the woodpile? I see an alligator now. Start to look up. Start to look up. Start to look here and see a cat. Do you all see the cat at the very top? Yeah. So try to not see the cat now. So what if this is your workplace? What if this is your classroom? What if this is your home? What if this is your family? What if this is your community center? What if this is your choir that you go to and have been going to for 20 years? And all of a sudden, someone says, "What's your choir?" It's there. But what about the cat? There's no cat in my choir. I've been going for 20 years. There's no cat in my choir. A lot of annoying people, the people who sing off key. There's no cat. In every living system, I promise you, there is a cat sleeping on the wood pile in your workplace, in your home place, in your community place. And Ellen Langer and others have told us we need to start to pay attention in new and different ways. We need to seek out the novelty. We need to seek out the sleeping cat. We need to seek out the playfulness. Once you start to learn to pay attention in different ways to what's in your place, you can start to attend to it. If I knew there was a cat sleeping in my woodpile, I might do different things with my woodpile. Same as in my classroom in my schools. So we're thinking about this idea of shifting our mindsets. So mindsets they're kind of like glasses, really. They're the beliefs that you hold about your life, about you, about your thoughts, about your experiences, and they're the filter through which you see and experience everything. We all have mindsets, and we wear them every day, and we often don't know we're wearing them. I was at a presentation just not long ago, and someone called them perspectacles, and I thought that was really clever. So what are the ways that we can start to notice our perspectacles? And then what if we started to intentionally use mindsets that helped us to look for sleeping cats, that helped us to notice the beauty in the woodpile, that helped us to see more flowers? What if I had flower-seeking glasses? And I know people will give you a bit of a hard time and say, yeah, those rose-colored glasses, they work just fine. It's very different. An appreciative perspective does not deny that there is struggle and trauma and challenge and obstacle and frustration and anger. We're humans. We carry all of that with us into every single situation we're in. So wearing appreciative mindset glasses doesn't mean that you only see happy. It means that within whatever you're seeing the reality of the woodpile, not wishing it was a pile of beets. You're working in your woodpile and you're loving the woodpile that you have. And you're noticing, where are those cats? What else is in there? What other flowers are in there? So that's the perspective that we used with our research. This idea of what happens when we go into schools and we work with teachers and we help them to start to put on appreciative glasses, to think about their work. What happens when we notice that? Well, and the interesting thing is I'll share, It's quite a sensational shift, and it happens within an hour of wearing glasses that help you to start to notice in different ways. It was really fun. Why do I keep doing that? That's interesting. Don't go there yet. So here was our glasses. We used a question. The question is really important. Whatever you ask is what you will look for. So think about Ellen Langer and her ideas around mindfulness. Whatever you ask is what you will likely start to look for, and that's what you're going to see, and that's what you're going to reflect on, and that's how you're going to be then maneuvering your way in the world. It's really important to think about the questions that we ask. And so from an appreciative perspective, how do we ask questions that allow us to start looking for some of those openings? This was a question that Keith and I kept stumbling on, that every time we used it with our groups of educators, they just thought, yeah, wow. So what if your primary role is to learn how to flourish so that you can encourage everyone else around you to do the same most of the time? So what if my work is not to be a mother? What if my work is to learn how to flourish in my role as a parent so that my kids and my husband and all those who come into my home can flourish with me, can see what it looks like to flourish in the role of being their mother? What if my work is not to be a university researcher? What if my work is to flourish in ways that allows me to uncover some stories that I can feed back to those people I love and adore and work with all the time, educators? What if my work is to flourish as a researcher? It's a very different way of going about my work. So this was the question. This helped put on these new glasses, and we're going to work with this question in just a little bit. So let me just show you a couple. You'll see Jen. I think Thomas is at the very back over there in the corner maybe. So this is a couple of ways, if you ever think about university research as an ice cream sundae challenge. We went into schools and asked teachers, what does it mean to you to flourish? We don't want to tell you what well-being looks like because we don't know. We need you to tell us, what does it look like to be really well and thriving in your work? And so one of the schools that we worked with, and in every site we asked the administrators and the teachers to work with us and say, what are you already doing that works well that we could try out and amplify and grow? And we'll collect some stories and you'll just continue to do as you do. So the one was the Ice Cream Sundae Challenge, and it ended up being very fun. The school was already in teams of 4. They were red, blue, green, and yellow for some administrative reason. So throughout the month, they each agreed individually to notice every time they had a flourishing moment. And they would sticky note pass it to their team leader, or they'd email it, or they'd phone it, or they'd Snapchat it, or whatever it was. And the leader then sent it to us, and we were able to collect all of the stories around. When do I feel grateful? Wow, that student who has really been a pain in the behind just opened the door and held it open for a student who's been really struggling lately and gave a big smile. Like, that melts my heart when I see that. So all of those moments that you really attend to when you're looking for them, when you're looking for the cat. And then at the end, we tabulated all the scores, and the team that won got an ice cream sundae, because this school really loves competition. Well, the good news was we brought enough ice cream for everybody. So they all got to eat their ice cream sundae. And the really interesting thing for us was as the teams came and talked to us, they said, we didn't even care who won. We didn't care who got the ice cream, because you know what? On the red team, we started going out for lunch on Wednesdays. We haven't done that in a decade. But as we started to pay attention to what we love most about our work, we wanted to talk with each other about it. We wanted to know how they were doing. We started to go out for lunch on Wednesdays. Now that's not going to make the news, right? But that's an exceptionally important piece to think about when we're organizing our organizations. How do we create opportunities for our humans to connect and share food together? That's a pretty big shift in how we work. So those are examples. The one was the symposium and just this idea of letting go. So we were all letting go and being a little crazy at our symposium. Let me give you this, and then I'm going to put you to work. And I should have asked, what time am I? 8-ish. Okay, so these are some of the, I'll let you read. These are some of the pieces that we found in our flourishing schools. As we were asking this, what if your role was to flourish? What would happen? Well, we would feel like we're on this team of amazing people trying to do really good things together. We'd probably be meeting with each other in the staff room and laughing and having fun and eating. And we'd probably feel like relationships were really at the heart of what we do here, and we'd find time for that. We're supported, challenged, and encouraged by our administrators to step out of the box, to risk, to take chances in our work. So one of the ways, let me use this to, let me do this is a standing. This is your standing moment of the evening. Stand. I've thrown a ton at you. You get extra points if you talk to someone you don't know tonight. Extra points. Do whatever you need to do to make sure you're awake and alive. Anything at all that is resonating with you, anything at all. What connections am I seeing? What do I think? Thank you. See, this is the great thing about these kinds of, by the time you get some energy going, everybody's like, I just want to help everybody. And it's an educator piece too. As educators, we do want to help. We do want to give. And that's part of the well-being work, is to notice how can we have self-full service with others. So how do we make sure that there's always enough for us to be able to do what we need to do for others? So how do we have self-full service? So this is what we call the flourishing inquiry model. Remember way back I was talking about that notion of appreciative inquiry. So as we worked with our educators and saw some of the words and terms that were really important to them for when they felt they were thriving at their work, we created an inquiry process. And you heard in the introduction with Joan Irvine, this idea of inquiry at the heart of teaching and learning can really create the kind of intellectual and social and emotional energy that is needed to carry you into the spaces of learning that our students really need from us. So we paired some of the ideas around inquiry, curiosity, and awe, thinking about Ellen Langer and how do we see differently. And so what you have is a very small version of this inquiry model. So this model is something you could do as an individual, with teams, with large organizations. You could do it over the course of a year and tap into each one of these. Or you could do it in a day and go a little bit quicker and make yourself, all the way through the cycle. And the point is, how do we focus on what makes us well as an opportunity to grow and amplify that? So on this first sheet that you have, we're at the purpose section. And the question is, what makes you feel alive and well? And the idea from appreciative inquiry is whatever we need to make this amazing change, we already have within us. It's already here. Everything we need to make the amazing changes we want is already here. It's in each of us and it's in the room. What we need are tools to access that, to find the vitality that's already in us, bring it up, and move it out. And so this exercise is an opportunity for you to tap in and find, whether it's the cat or the flower, or whatever analogy is ringing with you, what makes you feel really well. What makes you feel alive? What makes you feel engaged? When do you feel on fire, passionate? I could do this forever. For some people, maybe it's fixing cars. My dad loves fixing old cars. For some people, it's curling. My husband loves curling. I don't understand it, but he loves it. And his team, they're old men with team jackets that they wear to the curling rink because they love it. And they're sponsored. They're a sponsored team. Do you know who sponsors them? Themselves. They have each of their businesses on their back, sponsored, but they love it. They feel engaged, alive, connected. And that's so, so important. So take 2 minutes. You're kind of coming back to yourself now. The sheet and the exercise is very self-explanatory. You take 2 minutes, You work your way through the sheet, indicating when have you felt alive and well? When have you been that curling team of sponsored athletes on a Tuesday night at the Vernon Curling Club? They feel alive, engaged, on purpose. They're actually better people when they're doing that. So when do you feel that? Jot in as much detail as you can. What does it feel like, smell like, taste like? I really invite you to try this. I know for some of you may feel like, don't bother. I guarantee you the number of times I've done this now, it will end up being an enjoyable opportunity. So I'll stop talking, take 2 moments, fill out as much of the sheet as you can, and then fair warning, you're going to share this with someone. Ooh. So see what you can come up with. Feel that experience. Be there in that experience. If it's the curling club moment with the jackets, feel that excitement. If it's cooking, feel what it feels like. If it's being with your kids, your grandkids, your pups, maybe it's being at work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that was not as long as you needed to dig in, and as soon as you got started, I know there was so much more that you wanted to talk about. I hope you did get to the opportunity to experience the sharing of who you are at your best. It's not something that we get a lot of opportunity to do in our work and our life, so I hope you had that opportunity. And I hope you had the opportunity to be the story catcher for someone else's flourishing. It's quite a gift to be able to be present and attending to someone when they're telling you about who they are in their highest moment. So as I close, I leave you with some questions. What happens when I notice my well-being? How might I craft my work or my life in a way that nurtures my well-being? And how might I sustain through letting go? And that's not something that we talk a lot about in teaching. We talk about adding on, more. What do we start to let go of? Maybe it's glasses, mindsets we've been wearing that are not serving us well. Maybe it's ideas and beliefs and habits that are not working well for us. Maybe we cannot get to the top of the woodpile to touch that cat that we desperately want because we haven't thought to ask for a ladder. So maybe we let go of the preconceived notion we have about asking for help and support. There's so many different ways that you can attend to your own well-being, and really the wish that we have for you as researchers in this amazing endeavor we call schooling is that we all pay attention to well-being, our own, others, those around us, and going back to that first slide and thinking, wow, what if I were to flourish in the school, in my work, in my life, as a way of being that beacon of hope and love and courage and compassion? What an amazing way to spend our time. So I want to, you can tell I had a lot for you. I have a couple of gifts, we'll call them. It's a bit obnoxious to gift your own work, but I have to tell you, I truly love this little book. It was a book that came from the heart of me and my colleague. Teaching, schooling, education, it means a lot to us, and we are so privileged to be able to work with educators to learn about their stories and to help them find new ways to access different stories. This book really is one that I love, and I'm really proud that we were able to create together. And I would like to offer this in thank you to Joan, Irvine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Careful of you to do that.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
so pleased to receive that. Thank you.
Well, it is really my pleasure to be able to give this to you, as I was saying, a positive deviant. A positive deviant. Oh, we have to love our positive deviants.
Yeah, as I said, deviant for sure.
Yes,
Positive, yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes, I was just thinking, I live in a condominium with lots and lots of old people. I'm just thinking I'm going to start this in the building because all they want to do is complain about how bad life is.
Yes.
Tomorrow I'm going to start a whole new program.
I love it. Thank you. And my partner in scholarship, who Jen knows and who Thomas knows from their time with us in the symposium, Dr. Keith Walker, I think Jen captured it very well. She said he's a force of nature. And the two of us, when we decided this, that we wanted to actually commit to researching in positive ways. If you know research in general and education in particular, looking at what works well is not the most well received. Interesting, isn't it? We want to know about the problems, we want to know about everything that's failing, and then we want to figure out who to blame and shame, and then we want to do it again. So when we decided we wanted to commit to this research, we decided we're starting a little quiet, positive revolution. So you're among our community, and we are so pleased to know you. Thank you. So then the other one, I had a very, very, very busy several months. So the Perspectives on Flourishing in Schools, Jen has a chapter, Thomas has a chapter, and just to toot Jen's horn, her artwork is featured on the cover of our book. So that... we were very inspired by Jen and her work and her generally. And so when we were trying to find a cover for the book, I was like, oh, we have to use her Tree of Life. So that is featured on our book. And it is from Lexington out for your purchase and enjoyment. This is another little lovely book that I love. It came out in hardcover, so teachers are gonna blah when it's like $50 or something ridiculous. My little teacher wellbeing book, $25. We were determined. We want to print it so that teachers can actually afford it. I would love to give someone this book as a little takeaway. If you have, I don't know. Okay, I'll try to be really fair. My birthday was a few weeks ago. I thought I turned 49 and I was so excited. I only turned 48, so I'm younger than I thought I was. I know, I'm younger than I thought I was. So in my 48th year, it's very special this 48th year because I'm doing it twice. I don't know what I think I did the first time around. November 5th. Who has a birthday close to November 5th? No Novembers? November 12th? October. Ooh, someone do the math. It's October 30th. If you would like the book, I would be happy to give that to you. You're very welcome. Okay, and that's all for me.